Hello, I'm Layla Anna-Lee and welcome to the FIFAe Club World Cup pre-show as we build up to the impending finals. I'm joined by Spencer Owen, Mark Hatcher and Dan Gaskin. Spencer, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Layla. Great to be here. One of my favourite events of the year, the E-Club World Cup. A little bit different this year, format-wise, for obvious reasons, but excited to be back. Gutted that #United didn't qualify, I'm not going to lie to you, but I think that just shows you how competitive the qualification process was this year. More teams than ever, so I can't wait to see who comes out on top.
Mark, Spencer has mentioned how competitive it is. Am I right in saying this is possibly the most fiercely competitive qualifications we've seen?
I'd probably agree with you, to be honest. I think that there's not only more clubs, there's more players who want to get to that prestigious event, that the finals, and prove what they're worth. And for the clubs, there's more clubs involved. It just seems to get bigger and bigger every year. No surprise to see it getting more competitive, and no surprises to see a few big names falling out of the way as well.
And Dan, Mark's already mentioned, we've seen some surprises, some big names drop out. How's qualifications been for you so far?
Yeah, it's a shame to see some previous winners drop out and not re-attending the E-Club World Cup, but we have a lot of previous winners also back again. People from 2018, winners from 2019 as well. Seeing, of course, like FIFA Houston being involved, seeing Nicholas back. I'm really excited. And we have, of course, the returning current champions of complexity still involved. So this is going to be great.
It is. Well, we've got a packed show for you today. We're going to bring you up to date with everything you need to know ahead of the finals. We've got some zone reporters who are going to be bringing you unique insights into their region. And we're going to do the official draw for zones 4 and 5. And we've got some players and clubs to talk to. Plenty to happen today. So make sure you stick with us. And to dig deeper into the competition, Mark is going to break down the format for us.
Welcome to the FIFAe Club World Cup, where the top players from the world's best clubs battle it out to become one of the 6 FIFAe Club World Cup 2021 zone winners. To make it to the zone finals, the clubs went through a tough qualification process. Let's take a step back and look at how the clubs made it here. The FIFAe Club online qualifiers were split into 6 zones. In each zone, the clubs were divided into different conferences, where they competed in up to 3 divisions. Based on their performances, clubs moved up or down in the divisions. The qualifiers ran over the course of 4 weeks with multiple rounds. Every week the competition got even tougher as the bottom divisions dropped off. Clubs fought to secure their spot in the zone finals by means of a consistency ranking or by being the best placed club in the final week of qualifiers. After an action-packed qualification round, the 42 best clubs from all over the world will compete in 6 zones. Let's have a look at how the zone finals are set up. Like the qualifiers, the zone finals are split into 6 different zones. Zones are divided into different groups based on the number of participating clubs in each zone. Clubs battle it out in a round-robin style competition, which means that every club competes against one another. This setup goes forward to knockout stages and culminates in a zone final with the 2 best clubs. By the end of the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021, the 6 zone winners will be crowned.
So over 450 teams entered the Club World Cup. 42 teams have now qualified. We can understand that the format has actually undergone a bit of a radical change, hasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of changes that I think are for the better, but of course we have to make changes considering the climate that we're in at the moment as well, the situation. Playing from home, we're not going to get the LAN environment, we're not going to get the exciting shouting at each other across the stage this year, but I'm sure we'll get that soon. But I think that the changes are good, and I'm excited to see how it brings everyone together.
Spencer, tell me a little bit about the importance of this consistency rankings.
Oh, so important. I mean, it's a way of measuring how you've done over the whole 4-week process, right? And you can have one bad week and it can really cost you. It's a way to say that if you're consistently 2nd or 3rd best in the group, that might be enough. But if you have that one bad week, as I mentioned, you're going to drop down, potentially even drop into a division that leaves the format. So, yeah, you need to be good every single week against different opponents. And also across your team, right? You've got 2 players in there, 2 different consoles. You can't just rely on one person to carry it.
Mark, you broke down the format so well for us, but I'd like to know as well, is when it comes to change, I know lots of people don't love change. I'm not good with change. There's a lot of opinion and matter of opinion about that. But when it comes to change, what's done right here? What's positive with these changes? What do you enjoy about it?
I mean, the most important one, right? The fact that we're here, the fact that we're having an E-Club World Cup, the fact that these competitions keep rolling. It's very easy to kind of look past and look at some changes and some adaptations people have had to make and kind of think, oh, we could have done this better, or this is an opportunity to do this. No, the fact that we're still competing at this level, the fact that we've got teams from all around the world still having the opportunity to play in the FIFA E-Club World Cup is the biggest factor in itself. So the fact that we're keeping rolling, we're going to have FIFA, we're going to keep the players happy, we're going to keep everything rolling, and we're going to have some prize money and some champions to crown at the end of it.
So let's take a look at these zones then as well, because that makes quite a big difference here in that you are competing to be a champion of your zone, and the importance as well of winning that. How important, Spence, how important is it to be the champion here? Well,
it obviously depends on what zone you're in, but ultimately some zones have got a lot of teams trying to make it out, multiple conferences within each zone as well. And main game, when it comes to a qualification of any tournament, the main game is getting yourself there, isn't it? That's what you want to do. But if you can do it as a top dog, it means that you're sending out a message. It shows your consistency. It's a great advertisement for your organisation as well. And that's one thing that I think is really important to stress with this competition is it's the one that's most focused on the organisation. We talk a lot as FIFA traditionally being a 1v1 sport, if you like, or e-sport, about the players. And they're still paramount here. But in this tournament, it's about the club. It's the clues in the name, the E-Club World Cup. And it's about highlighting and celebrating the best teams in the scene. And what better way to do that than finish top of your zone?
Well, it'd be good to have a look at the two zones that we're doing a draw for today. Zone 4, we're going to do a draw for. Just so you're aware that we're not doing a draw for some of the others that don't necessarily need one. So here's Zone 4. Dan, if you can walk me through these teams and how you feel they're going to do here, because they've qualified, they've done well already.
I mean, there's some names that are already jumping out. Astralis with Aga and Houston. Houston, a previous E-Club winner, and Aga, a previous World Cup champion. Already, I'm looking at that squad and saying, okay, that's one that is definitely going to be beating for the rest of the teams. Manchester City Esports, Shells and Ryan, they've been performing really well as of late. Two that have been together for quite a long time now. So I think this teamwork and teams that have been together, they've played together, is going to be very important. But also, it's about that solo aspect as well. Who is performing well in their individual games? And this is going to be such a difficult zone to try and top. I think that's what Spencer was talking about. There's some zones are going to be really difficult, and it's going to be, of course, a very proud moment if you can come out on top in a zone like this.
So that graphic that you saw there are just the teams that are in the draw. We haven't done the draw yet. That will come later, and we'll give you all the details on the draw. We're going to be doing the draw for Zone 4 and Zone 5. Let's take a look at Zone 5 now, Mark. If you can walk me through here, any big surprises for you, any standout teams in Zone 5?
Yeah, they are, and there are a few big surprises, but the teams that don't surprise me, and I want to talk about a little bit, are if you look at Conference 3 there and you look at Inter Esports, they have been dominant throughout the entire qualification process. They went pretty much unbeaten for the entirety of it, and that shows how strong that they've been. Dux Latam, they were amazing as well. FC Basel Esports, you've got Nicholas, a previous champion on there, but there's also a few surprises as well. You look at down at the bottom, like Central Español, Uruguay, a team that I hadn't heard of, an organization I haven't heard of, and two players that I hadn't heard much about either. So the fact that we've got more teams, more talent coming through, and what for me feels like the year of new talent in FIFA esports is great to see.
The year of new talent. Spencer, would you agree?
Well, certainly, across the board, we're seeing new players pop up that either maybe they've just reached an age that allows them to compete, or this is the game that's really working for them. And just coming off what Mark says there is one thing I really like about this zone sort of feature is you're seeing teams that are maybe better known in other territories. Like, for example, you got Basel there. There's a Swiss football club putting together a South American, team, and that kind of worldwide brand power, if you like, that we see traditional football teams do when they go on tour and things like this to try and grow their club. We're seeing it in esports now as well. Even teams like FUTWIZ, who a UK-based organisation, but they've got players in Australia, players in South America as well. This has become a worldwide organisation. That's something that the E-Club World Cup allows.
Spence, as with your experience with hashtag, can you let us know a little bit about how the teams will be feeling? Because Zone 4 and 5, they'll be watching this right now, really getting excited and nervous about the draw. And when it comes to tactics and planning and who you want to be drawn against, who you don't, tell us how they'll be feeling right now.
Yeah, I mean, draws are tough because you're ultimately powerless, right? You're watching on and you're hoping you get a favourable one, but it doesn't matter what the competition is. You've got to be expecting to have to play the best players. And if you want to win the tournament, beating the best players. So, of course, it's important. It's important to try and feel like you're going into a tournament with confidence and maybe fancying yourself in your draws. But listen, there's not a lot they can do now apart from watch, find out who they're playing against, try and manage those nerves a little bit. Sure, put a bit of preparation in as much time as they have to try and focus on their opponents that are coming up. But ultimately, like I say, if they want to win this, they've got to be expecting to play and beat anyone.
Mark, we've had a little chat about Zone 4 and 5, but overall, out of the full 42 teams, which teams are exciting you the most this year?
One player and one team that I've got to look at, which is kind of an interesting one for me. It's the current world champions, right? The current reigning E-Club World Champions, I should say, is Complexity. And they have been dominating their region, but they've had a little bit of a battle going on with New York City Esports. And if you look a little bit deeper into it, you look at Chris and Joxan. Joxan, for me, he's probably one of the best players I've seen in the world so far. We've been casting a lot of the North American qualifiers, and he's won back-to-back now. But it's been Chris who's always been over his shoulder. So I expect that battle to keep going on. But on the other side of things, you look at some of their teammates, and, you look at Complexity, you look at Maxi. Been a little bit quiet this year, but he was a little bit quiet throughout the tournament until that big moment that he had when they won it. And, he managed to close out that game. So for me, again, it's a wonderful look into the teamwork, right? You can't just have one player relied on getting the results. You have to both perform. So Complexity, for me, are definitely a team I'm going to be keeping my eye on. They need to defend their crown as well as they can, right? They can't defend it across the world, but they can definitely defend it here in their region.
Dan, has the story of the finals already been set up in this qualifications, or do you think it could all change from here on?
I think we've definitely developed rivalries within these regions, and I like what Mark said. Like, there is kind of extra pressure on Complexity because they were able to win on the international stage, and now they're having to do the same, but they're within their own region, which is where they realistically should be dominating. But there have been challenges coming from other teams, and you can say that about other regions as well. I mean, I think of Footwiz Australia, for example, a team that are always fantastic. They usually qualify for the E-Club World Cup, but now we've seen players kind of spread themselves over different teams, and they're going to be competing against each other. And I'm wondering who is going to come out on top there. Like, it's crazy that we've got all these internal developments and all these internal rivalries, and they're going to get to play each other, usually because it's such a big stage, because it's an international event. We might not see a Australian team versus Australian team or American team versus American team, but we will see that happen, and we will be able to say they are the best team in that region. So I think that's quite exciting.
We've obviously mentioned Complexity and some of the big, stronger teams there. But Spencer, I'd like to know, what about the prospects, the newbies, the sort of wild cards? Who could surprise us this year?
There's some teams out there that are growing in, shall we say, their reputation across the scene. And you look at the RB Leipzig team, who actually have got another player that we all know about, who's actually not eligible yet, in Anders, who's potentially going to be a world beater. But the squad they've got coming into this are really strong, and I like seeing that. And we can focus on individuals, sure, but I think as someone that does run an organisation, I like to bring it back to the organisations and what they're doing, because we talk about consistency points in qualification. What about consistency over a number of years? It's much harder than maybe many people think to do in FIFA. So when we see these organisations come through, like I mentioned, a Futwiz earlier, RB Leipzig here, really like the look of the Makers team this year as well, with Principe and Oli Bolli. I think that's a really good team to watch, Italy and Swedish combination. I've got a lot of time for these teams that are building this name in the scene, and what better way this year to really cement yourself as one of the best teams in your region. Talk about Zone 4 at the moment here with Europe, and let's say RB Leipzig, who we know have really grown in again the traditional football world, but they're doing it at the same pace in FIFA esports as well.
Mark, do you agree that there are some teams who may not feel that they would absolutely win the final, but the experience that they'll build here and the preparation and that build up is so pivotal? Do you agree that that's something that they should absolutely be looking at?
I think that a lot of teams maybe wouldn't have expected after week one to reach the heights that they have. But as the confidence has grown, all the teams who have made it here deserve to get here, right? I mean, I think to touch on one team that's been consistent, and maybe two names that we weren't too familiar with, is Team Hullet. Team Hullet have been one of the most consistent teams in one of the most stacked regions in Zone 4 as well, with so many teams, so many names across Europe and the surrounding areas that haven't made it here. You look at 11s, for example, you look at the likes of Neo, got Dullon, Mike and Gorilla on that team. They haven't made it there. So if you're taking out teams like that kind of doubt and that are we good enough to win this thing? That disappears very quickly after 1 week of good results. So every single team that's here will be expecting to win. And I kind of like that. It means we're going to have like no holds barred in these teams, between these teams and these matches.
That's going to be awesome, without a doubt. We're going to delve in a little bit more into our zones at the moment, because this year we're introducing zone reporters who are focusing on their unique zones and giving us the qualification news there. We're going to go straight to Zone 3, where Lokmanu Chatuverdi is to give us an update on his zone.
Let's talk about the most dominant team from Zone 3 of the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021. 25 Esports, a top esports organization from Saudi Arabia, managed to win the FGS West Asia Qualifier number 1, and none other than 25 Mashal was the player who did it for them. Now, in the E-Club World Cup, Biziat 9 and Abuza are the two top guns that have carried them through the online qualifiers, and not just carried them, but they have dominated it, and they've finished top of the rankings with 1060 consistency ranking points. Only team from South Africa to qualify for the FIFAe Club World Cup for the first time is none other than Goliath Gaming. Both the athletes representing this organization on PlayStation and Xbox are Julio and Kalen respectively. Kalen, of course, a very renowned player in the circuit, the best player South Africa has ever produced, and he has secured his playoffs by winning both the FGS qualifiers, and Julio has lost to his teammate in both the finals. So both players, of course, being the top South African guns, will be taking on the Saudi Arabian Giants in the zone final, starting on the 24th of February and ending on the 28th. Al Nassr, one of the best football clubs in Saudi Arabia, has a history of producing some amazing FIFA talents as well. This time they did manage to finish 4th in the online rankings of the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021 and have secured their position in the zone finals. Ahmed Rui and Rakan 131, both the players being amongst the top pros from Saudi. One of them has obviously finished as a 2-time Saudi League champion, and one has been a grand finalist as well. Ahmed Rui, in fact, recently finished in the top 3 of the FIFA Global Series West Asia Qualifier number 2. It'll be interesting to see how both these players perform in the zone finals, giving so much of experience they have behind their back. We have seen some amazing matchups in the online qualifiers of Zone 3 of the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021. Goliath Gaming, of course, losing out to 25 Esports, will be seeking some sort of revenge in the zone finals when they face off against each other on the 24th of February. Whereas on the other hand, the Wake Esports Club, who did finish 2nd in the rankings, are 25 Esports' fiercest rivals. So keeping that in mind, let us know, who do you think is going to be the zone winner, the zone champion of Zone 3 in the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021.
So there's Zone 3 then, and one player and one team I want to talk about a little bit, because I love giving some love to regions that we haven't seen too much of previously, is Goliath Gaming, South Africa, putting themselves on the map. And a player that I know Spencer knows a little bit about is, of course, Kalen. We heard him back in FIFA 18. We had rumours of this player from South Africa that was putting up 30 0s in Weekend League. Well, now he's got to this position, Spencer. You've got to be expecting big things from him.
Well, you call yourself Goliath Gaming. I'm always going to be expecting big things. The question is, will they come up against a David? You know, that's the problem. But yeah, no, it's great. I completely with you. This is what I like about the zone and the conference setup, is we're seeing these teams that sometimes don't get that moment in the sun, if you like, to really shine and come through. And, you know, coming off the back of the Goliath chat, I want to talk about Tuwake as well. Tuwake have come through in 2nd position in their conference with a +3 goal difference, right? So what I like about this 4-week long, qualification process, lots of games being played, is that you have a lot of data. You can look at that and straight away, even someone that's not familiar with that team can say, well, we know they're obviously not conceding too many goals, because if you're getting through on a +3 goal difference, it means you're not scoring too many either, and you're just narrowly getting those points. Teams around them with 20, 30 goal difference, completely different games of FIFA involved when you look at 2-8. So that's what we'd expect to see going into this tournament, is a tight defence. So I like having this information at our disposal. And yeah, 2 very different teams of the 4 that have gone through there.
Dan, we're already discussing a David and Goliath story here, and their rivals are in the same group too.
Yeah, and I think the surprise for me is that we've got a little bit of a rivalry here when everyone's already taken down the actual Goliath. I mean, not seeing MS Dasari competing in like the Saudi Arabia kind of region, like that's a bit bizarre. I think everyone's looking at all these names throughout this qualification process and saying, well, where's X, Y, or Z? They're usually qualifying, and it is a different year. And we're not going to see some of the biggest and best names because they can't qualify every year. It's too hard. Like, consistency is very difficult in FIFA 21 and in any FIFA game in general, to be honest. But these four teams, they all deserve to be here. Goliath Gaming, as Mark said, I think they look like one of the stronger sides to compete, but 25 Esports statistically look absolutely phenomenal as well. So there's no reason why, in my opinion, any four of these teams could really show up and take down another.
So we've touched on Zone 3. It's time now to turn our attentions to Zone 4, where we're going to be speaking to two-time world champion Australis Aga. Aga, how are you? Good to have you on. Congratulations, first of all, for qualifying. How do you feel ahead of next week?
Thank you so much for having me. Feel quite relaxed right now. I mean, this is going to be an interesting tournament. Will be my second E-Club World Cup. I was lucky enough to take part of the first one ever, where I lost in the semi-final to the winner Makuso. So should be fun to take part also with the format changing a little bit. When I played, it was 1v1. Now you have to rely on a teammate as well. So yeah, I like it.
Aga, a question from me. I know that you are a World Cup champion, but you are not an E-Club World Cup champion. However, your teammate Houston has managed to win an E-Club World Cup. I know it's slightly different this year, but what would it mean to you to be able to win in this tournament?
I think it will mean a lot. The FIFA 21 season haven't been as good for me as I expected so far. So this is a chance to rise, and I believe playing with Ustun is a great opportunity for me. He gives me the mindset that, at least in the qualifiers for this, that I actually just had to beat my opponent 1 out of 2 times because I knew he was going to win his match. So it gives you a lot of confidence to play together with him. And it would be nice to be the first person ever to have won an E-World Cup and an E-Club World Cup. That would be 2 of the major tournaments. So that's a motivation for me as well.
And do you think there's any sort of point that you have to prove here? Because, I mean, as FIFA players get a little bit older, people start to say, oh, well, maybe they're dropping off a little bit. Maybe questions have been asked about you personally in your career, but you seem to be finding your form at the right time here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about peaking at the right time, and obviously I haven't peaked yet. I think there will always be people who question you and your level, and I feel like people had the right to do that this year since I haven't been performing. I haven't had the best start to the season, and now we're coming to the deciding end, so I have to turn up now, otherwise it will be a disappointment. But being here at the E-Club World Cup and just qualifying for a conference that arguably was the hardest in the Zone 4, in my opinion, obviously a little bit biased, but it was super tough to have to play Adriman every single week in order to qualify. I feel like we have some good chances, and I feel like that was already a point proven.
Hi, Aga, it's Mark here. Quick question for you, and I'm going to talk about the club because this is the E-Club World Cup, and obviously Australis coming into FIFA esports is huge, not only for you, but for the scene itself, one of the biggest esports organizations in the world. How did that come about, and what does it mean to have that badge on your chest this year?
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for me, obviously, to represent arguably the greatest esports organization in the world. And I mean, I was a free agent after I stopped in North around 1.5 years ago, and then with the pandemic coming and stuff, it wasn't looking too good in terms of getting back and finding an org for this year. But Australis had me on their radar, and they were ready to go into FIFA esports, which I think it was a gift for me, but also for FIFA and the esports itself growing. Because I believe Australis can take it to the next level, and obviously our focus right now is on performing. But I mean, that Australis is involved is great for all of us, I think.
Aga, we've got a question from the FIFAe Instagram channel. A gentleman called Ryan wrote in and asked, what's it like playing alongside Ustin, and where would you rank him on your best teammates list?
Well, that's a good question. I played with many good players during the years, but I mean, in terms of ranking Ustin right now, as I think he's one of the best, and the results speak for him. He performs consistently, and I mean, I think just in this format, there's no one I would rather play with than Ustin. I mean, he scores so many goals, and he became the top goal scorer in our zone as well. So I mean, it gives you a major confidence boost to play with him. In terms of ranking him with the teammates I've been playing with, he's definitely up there with like one of the best players. And I played with pretty many good players such as Marcuso and PSG Dax, Ryan Pessoa in Hashtag United as well. So I mean, there's a lot of good names, but Ustin is definitely up there as one of the best players I played with.
Aga, I'm glad you threw a hashtag name in there, because I was going to have a word with you otherwise. You threw it in there last minute. You've said a lot of nice things about your teammate, Ustin, and I agree with them all. But I want to give you some praise right now as well, because, you know, I think we talked about how maybe this year you'd been slept on a little bit, but consistency points was something that was used in qualification for this process over a 4-week period. But I want to talk about consistency over a 4-year period, or even more than 4, really, with yourself. You know, people are talking about how you're a little bit older than some of the other players now, and you're kind of an elder statesman. And I don't think people really respect how actually hard it is to stay in the game that long. I mean, we talk about when you won your FIWC, as it was then, World Championship. You're one of the few players that has actually transitioned from the kind of pre-Ultimate Team version of FIFA esports into this. There's not many players left from that era, as you well know. Talk about how you've done that and how you've been able to find that consistency year on year across different games.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate it, Spence. I mean, I've been competing on a global level for almost 10 years now, which is, I think, is underrated, really, because the level we see now, and with the new generations, you have to be able to play against and handle. It's not easy, and to keep the hunger and desire to win. It's really been the key to like mentally set myself up and be motivated every year. And I feel like that has been the key. And obviously, been good at adapting at every game. Every FIFA version has new ways of playing it, new metas. And yeah, it's all about hard work, passion, and dedication, really, which is my 3 main words. And I think every year, some people have been sleeping on me, but somehow I always managed to get a good result. And this year it could very well be the Club World Cup, but yeah, let's see. There's a lot of good teams and players here, so one game at a time.
Yeah, certainly. It's a great team you've got there, I think. And, you know, in traditional football, which I know is something that you're very good at as well, we talk about when you have elder players, which you're nowhere near that age in traditional football, but in the FIFA scene, you know, you kind of are. These players can take on new roles within teams, can't they? They can take on a kind of role where they can help younger players come through and help them learn from their experience. With this being a team-orientated event, do you feel like your experience and your exposure to this game now allows you to be a really good teammate for Ustin and have so much experience at your disposal to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I feel like that was one of the things that me and the team behind Astralis talked about when signing with them, that I wanted to contribute with much more than just my FIFA game. Like I want everyone in my organization, and especially the FIFA department, since that's where I have the most knowledge, to grow. And this was also to help Ustin become a better player and spare with him and say, hey, let's take that last step you need to become the best player in the world. I want to help you with that because I have been the best player in the world. And I know what it takes to get to the top. There are small things we perhaps need to adjust or talk about, but I will try to help you. And together we are a good combination. And I think it was also like it got reflected in the qualifier for this, because we kept on clutching up for each other. So one game I perhaps won 2 in a row where Houston lost the game, and in other games I lost the game and Houston won 2. So it really showed what this tournament is about. It's a team tournament and it's about helping each other out.
Aga, these are powerful words that you're saying. I'd like you to tell me, what are your expectations ahead of the event next week?
I think our expectations is definitely, like, now we're here, we fought hard to get here, and we want to win, but we also know that that's not how your mindset 100% should be before having played one match in the tournament yet. So I feel like first and foremost we're looking forward to see the draw. Then we're going to analyze and take notes of our opponents. Then we're going to take one game at a time, make sure to get the points needed to get through the groups. And yeah, after that, it's all in on the title, hopefully.
Well, that draw is coming up very, very shortly. So thank you, Aga. Much appreciated and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, I really loved in that conversation the way he describes the confidence in his teammates and how he felt that if he could just win his one, he knew that second one would be confident as well. Like, that confidence must really give a real boost to his play.
Yeah, you have to be confident, because otherwise you are going to be in a situation where you put unnecessary pressure on your teammates, and you don't want that. We've seen it at events where you can see it online. You do feel a lot of pressure when your teammate has won. So you need to be able to support them both physically and mentally. It's amazing that they have these relationships, to be honest. Like, outside of the game, the chemistry has to be built. They probably play other video games with one another. They probably talk to each other regularly. And Aga is a great guy. Like, we've been lucky enough to have him on the broadcast team. He came in, he commentated a little bit of FIFA esports as well. He's been able to see how things go on behind the scenes. I'm sure he's learned a lot as well, seeing what happens to the players, what they go through, what it's like interviewing someone else. And I've seen him grow. Like, his interview then was so good, whereas previously he's maybe stuttered a little bit or got a little bit nervous. He looks so confident. He looks like a different man. And honestly, he's just growing. Like Spencer says, he's come from the early eras of FIFA to now the current era of FIFA, and he is one of the best in the game.
Yeah, Spencer, you're the perfect person for me to ask this to, is how pivotal, how important is that team dynamic and that friendship? And how much of an advantage can this give him?
It's huge. It's something that at Hashtag we were very keen to instill in our players, even before there was a team format to play in. You know, if you take it back to the origins of the sort of tournaments that came out before the E Club World Cup had the 2v2 element to it. We had a group of players. When Aggie played for Hashtag, we had 4 players, and we wanted them to very much coach each other and support each other at a time when there was really no benefit to your teammate doing well. You know, it's not like in football where you actually are on a team, and obviously if your striker's scoring goals, then that's going to help you as a goalkeeper. Yes, you play for the same organisation, but it's an individual sport. For me, it's very important that these guys all work together and help each other, because you're just going to share intel, you're going to improve together, and it creates a positive atmosphere. Most people that play FIFA are football fans, and therefore they have that team mentality, which isn't necessarily always the case in other sports. So it comes natural to these guys in many cases, particularly someone like Aga, which I alluded to earlier. He's actually a very, very good footballer. He's played at a really good level in Denmark. I've actually played football with him a number of times as well, and I've seen firsthand what he can do. So he's got all the ingredients, and that's why he's had the career he's had. You know, he's probably proven a lot of people wrong, the fact that he's still maintaining the level. But, you know, as Dan said, you know, he's just a consummate professional. He says all the right things. He's a dream to have at your club. So Astralis have done really well there. I'm always rooting for him, you know, unless he's up against the Hashtag player. I always like to see Aga do well.
Very fair. Mark, he's got 2-time World Cup champion, but not won a Club World Cup before. He could have 2 majors under his belt, couldn't he?
That's not a bad record, is it, to be honest with you?
Yeah.
And for a man like Aga, it's no surprise. I think one thing I took away from that interview that Dan kind of alluded to was just how Aga seems to be in a really good place mentally as well. He seemed really relaxed, really chilled, and for someone who's been through so many highs and lows in FIFA esports, and, you know, he's had that, like you mentioned, the major wins. He's also had some years recently where people started asking those questions, you know, can Aga still do it? And rightly so, because, you know, he's a former world champion. You'd expect a former world champion to win everything, right? But he just seems really calm, really confident, in a great place. He's got a good teammate alongside him as well in Houston, who I think we're going to see put in some really, really big performances when it comes to these crunch matches. Scoring goals for fun, once again, is what he does best. But for me to see Agger in that kind of space where he just looks really calm and comfortable, that's where he plays his best FIFA, where there's no pressure on his shoulders, where he's not putting pressure on his own shoulders. So I'm looking forward to Astralis doing some big things.
Can we discuss age? Because that came up a couple of times in the interview. He is merely 24, and perhaps some of this confidence and relaxed vibes comes from the age too.
Is that a question for me because I'm the eldest, or?
I'm gonna say that I am. Look, it's a really interesting thing as an e-athlete as well. Spencer, go for it. Give me your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this year, I think actually FIFA, the average age of the FIFA players come down, I think, this year. And I don't know if the guys agree with me on that, but from the guys that are coming through, the amount of 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, in previous years, it was like you'd have one, maybe two really strong 16-year-olds come through, the likes of Tex, Dunn and Mike, etc. It feels like there's a whole plethora of them now. And I think that's not by accident. I think that's by design. I think that you talk about how many years it's kind of taken for the scene to establish itself, and the fact that some of these guys, when the first majors were coming out in Ultimate Team, might have been 12, 13 years old. They're kind of core, young, youthful FIFA players that are spending a lot of time in the game, developing their skills, but with a view to being a professional. Whereas all the other guys that were already 16 plus when the events came out, they were not necessarily catching up, but they'd not had those prime FIFA years knowing they could have a career in it. So that we're seeing the first generation come through now. And you look at Agger as someone who's, almost 10 years older than a lot of these guys with that 10 years experience, even though he's a young man still. In the FIFA world, he's not. There is some, mechanical arguments to say that certain things might drop off at a certain age. I think that's more apparent in other games than it is in FIFA. But there is a lack of top performances from players sort of over that 25 age group. Dito stands out as someone who got to a final of the FEWC previously in his 30s, but there's not many of them. So Agger knows that. He knows that whilst I believe there's always room for someone to change that and become an exception to the rule and have a long career, that's got to be something you've really got to fight for, because it is different to a traditional sport. The game changes every year. You need that double down of hunger and motivation every 12 months. So again, it is a massive kudos to Agger that he's been able to do that for so long.
Mark, is there such thing as prime FIFA years, and could Agger be setting a precedent here?
It's a difficult one to answer. I always think this in esports because, it's still relatively a young industry in comparison to, traditional sports, etc. Yes, we do see sometimes players choosing to go into different career paths at certain ages when they maybe don't have the results that they would have wanted for a year or so. And they're kind of like, it's difficult to pick myself up and go back again. But I don't think there is. I think there's a lot of players who are still on top in other esports who, again, a little bit older, they have that experience under their belt and they're still winning trophies. So I think age is just a number. You've got to remember that when we started seeing all these competitors in esports, they were of a certain age, and you kind of get that idea of, can they still do it because they're not that age anymore? Whereas they're still the same player. They might have some different priorities in life. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in and where we need to give huge plaudits to Agger, right? Because in other esports, you have some teammates alongside you, right, on your team, and, they're going to pick you up in those moments. They're going to take some of the weight when you're not playing well. But in FIFA, every 12 months, you have to find that motivation from within yourself, that pressure you need to put on yourself to perform year after year. And I think that is so commendable for a player like Agger to be doing. And to touch on what Spencer said again, players like Agger have set the standard now for FIFA esports. They've created this scene that we see in front of us for these young players to come through. So he's not going to want to give up that mantle of being one of the best players in the world. He's going to want to take some 16-year-olds out, I think, in the FIFAe Club World Cup, and any of these youngsters that are coming through, they're going to have to go through Agger first.
Great to hear from Agger there. Now we're going to hear from some of his Zone 4 competitors in the powerful Paisley print of Manchester City. It's Shells and Ryan. Hi guys, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good. 6 days to go, Ryan. How are the emotions right now, and how's the prep going?
It's pretty chilled out, if I'm being honest, for me, myself. Don't know about Shells, but yeah, we just got our accounts for the Club World Cup, so haven't started to practice yet, but yeah, we feel confident.
Shells, Ryan's chilled out. Are you?
To be honest, I'm a bit exhausted. We had a lot of competitions recently, just finished with the E-Prem qualifiers, and luckily both of us managed to make it through, so we'll be representing Man City there. But I'll be getting on the grind in the weekend or so and ready to start again.
Hello, lads. Spencer here. I've got a question for both of you, really, because you guys have formed a fairly formidable partnership here at Man City. Obviously, a huge club in the FIFA and football world. But you both individually seem to love this competition. You've both been around it a fair bit over the last few years, representing different teams sometimes. But what is it about this format and this E-Club World Cup, starting with you, Shells, that seems to bring out the best in you?
I don't know. I think it's like having that team aspect. I think when me and Ryan both know we got to play for each other and perform for each other, I think it kind of gives us a bit of a boost, a bit of that edge to kind of push through in the tough games. I think even in the best of threes, for example, when we both had to win our final game to put us through, we're kind of not just playing for ourselves, we're playing for each other because we both want us to do well. And sometimes I think when you're alone, you kind of lose that mental aspect. You might lose confidence in yourself, but when you got that support from Ryan and Saul and stuff like that, it kind of pushes you to the next level. But I think we just boost each other and try to put us in the best situation, really.
Ryan, is that the same for you? Obviously, you've been both been a number of different teams. But obviously, you made the solo appearance of all time for #Academy in the E-Club World Cup in the past. You agreeing what Shells says there? You've had experience in multiple teams, so you know what it means to play for someone else as well as yourself.
Yeah, of course, there's that aspect to it, but I say mainly for me, I don't even know what it boils down to, but I sort of play with less pressure in a weird way. I don't know why. Even though it means a lot to me, I still play with less pressure than it is in for Champions Cup, for example. I sort of how can I describe it? I play Club World Cup more for my teammate than myself, if that makes sense. I'm more happy that Shells does well. Obviously I want to qualify as well, but it gives me that boost knowing that my teammate's going to succeed as well if I do well.
Question for me then, gentlemen. It's Mark here. I want to talk about your performances so far this season. And we always talk about peaking at the right time. And it seems like the last few weeks have been really positive for both of you as far as your performances are concerned. Do you feel like you're both starting to find the rhythm of FIFA 21 a little bit and it's been helped by that team aspect, starting with you, Shells?
I think recently I've been kind of that player that kind of gets better later on in the stage of the season. So the first tournament of the year, I started off really slow. Second tournament, top 64. Third tournament, top 48, which obviously ain't ideal. I want to be performing at the broadcast, but it's improvement, and that's all I can really ask for myself. But I think, I just learn the game a little bit more each week, and you start to get familiarized with the formations, the players, what you can do, what you can't do, and stuff like that. But I think gradually I just try and improve each week, and hopefully, around this time where a lot of tournaments are coming to their end, you're trying to fight for that playoff spot. You just play your best FIFA and put yourself in a good position for it.
So Ryan, Shells, you two, I've seen you in recent qualifiers. Both of you have looked pretty happy. You've been celebrating. You've been scoring some good goals. I've seen some dance moves. Are we going to see more of that in the E-Club World Cup? Are we going to see two happy chappies celebrating, giving us dance moves? It seems like you two are just enjoying yourselves lately. Ryan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I know that for me there'll be celebrations. Who knows? I might not even score a goal, but if I score, then there'll be celebrations, no doubt. But yeah, as I said, I'm starting to play, or as you said anyway, I'm starting to play with a smile on my face, a lot more, I guess, calmer and sort of enjoying the occasion rather than panicking and being a bit nervous. It's there's not really any negative emotion when I play. Of course, I'd be lying if I said there's not any nerves. Of course, specifically before the game starts, I'm nervous, but as soon as the game starts flowing, and I know if I can get into my groove, I know how good I am ability-wise, but it's always been, my downfall has always been the mentality side. So as long as I'm enjoying myself, then I'm here.
And Shells, is it part of the Man City etiquette that you have to do the woo or whatever the dance move is that I've seen lately?
No, it's not a part of etiquette, but I think obviously we all know how hard it is to qualify for events and stuff. So when I get there, man, I was happy to be here, man. So you might see a couple of dance moves at Club World Cup, but if we're performing well, man, you might see everything. We'll see what happens.
Ryan, I find it so powerful and such a strong self-awareness that you've literally just sat there and said, my mindset can be my downfall. What do you put in place to make sure that you're not carrying too much pressure and that you are having fun and doing it the right way for your mind?
I'll be honest, we've been working with Edgar with City for the last about a year and a half now, maybe 2 years. I'm not sure the total amount, but it's around about there. And he's always told me, it's basically my mentality. I'd always use, I'm not going to get too techie with it because it's so many words where it's I have to explain it. But he basically said the way I would approach games is avoid an approach, basically. So I'd go in with a negative approach to something rather than thinking, for example, I would say to myself, oh, I can't lose this game. It'd be terrible if I lose. Whereas now I go into the game thinking, if I lose, I lose. If I win, I win. I don't mind if I concede a goal because I back myself to score more than my opponents. Things like that, for example. So I say we've been working on that for quite some time, as I said, but it's more so last week, in all honesty. Maybe about last week, Tuesday, probably around about the same time last week anyway. It clicked in my head and I was like, why am I getting so nervous to play against other opponents? Of course, everyone's good. I know how good they are, but I back myself to be better than them. So why am I being afraid to play them? And yeah, since then, I've been on a good run, I'd say.
I love that. I love the change in language as well, because it is important. However, I am going to nudge that negativity a little bit and ask you, in your group, because we're doing the draw later on, in your zone, who is your biggest competitor? Where do the nerves lie, and who are you guys going to worry about here?
Yeah, I'll go for this one first. Shows. I'd say, I don't know, shows. Maybe you have the same guy that I'm about to say, but like, yeah, the one guy that I'm afraid of is absolutely nobody. I'm afraid of nobody. I'm ready to go.
You got me on that. You got me on that one. I thought he was gonna say someone, and then he says
Is Shell's gonna say the same
guy? To be honest, I'll take our chances. Like, I believe like anyone can win here. I definitely believe in our ability. If we play to our best, we can. I don't know if Oli Bolly's on Xbox or PlayStation. I think he's one of the strongest players. But once again, I'm not really afraid of anyone. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I love that. It's a perfect answer, guys. Thank you so much. Great talking to you, and have an amazing time next week.
Thank you.
We'll see you then. Good luck. I love that slight McGregor reference. I think the line from McGregor was, I'll apologise to absolutely nobody. The mindset's really quite powerful, isn't it, Dan?
It is, and it's good to see them laughing, like joking around, because we have seen some people struggle with not just FIFA esports, but other esports, especially in these times as well, getting a little bit down, but seeing both of them happy, it makes me happy, honestly. And like we've seen recently in qualifiers, like they've been popping the dance moves. So I hope that carries on throughout the FIFAe Club World Cup.
Mark, I found it really interesting as well, them talking about sharing the pressure and how actually when they play for each other, they have a bit more, I think the word he used was boost for their play.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a great example of what being in a team environment can do for two players. The fact that, Ryan was saying he plays for Shells, and Shells is saying, he plays for Ryan. That kind of momentum that you build, because if your teammate wins, you share that win, right? And if they lose, unfortunately, what pressure you might have put on yourself from that loss and that disappointment that comes with it, that gets split between the both of you, and it kind of takes some of those negative thoughts away, because you're both having to deal with it instead of just one of you. So I think the team environment is a great place for both of these players to be. It's shown in their results recently. They've both been putting in great performances for City in numerous competitions. And I really feel like this could be a kickstart for both of their seasons, not only in the team basis here at the FIFAe Club World Cup, but also on an individual basis moving into some more majors.
Spencer, this really is, it does relate to the mindset as well, just carrying a lot of pressure. These are big pressure events, and being able to share it with the team is what makes the Club World Cup so special.
Definitely. I mean, working with a mental coach, it's great to see that that's coming more and more part of FIFA esports now. It doesn't surprise me at all that Man City are at the top of their game when it comes to working out what all the different extra things you can do are to improve your players' performance. Mentality is a huge part of every single sport. There's a lot of sports which there's some unbelievable players in, but their mental sometimes limitations stop them getting to the level they can do. So I think that's really important. And yeah, this team element, I don't know about you guys, but I actually thought that interview was really refreshing. These guys seem really positive. They seem really happy. Like I think Shell's even said, I'm happy to be here at one point in terms of how hard it is just to qualify. So there's that enjoyment that can, let's be honest, sometimes leave competitive FIFA sometimes, particularly when you talk about the schedule that these guys are playing at the moment, the amount of events, the pressure in those events, the amount of players you've got to beat to qualify for something. And then you talk about it in the context of this year as well, where, you're not getting that boost of going to a live event and seeing all your friends and colleagues and competitors. So it's nice to see these guys playing with a smile on their face, happy to be here. Also, I think it's worth pointing out that homage to McGregor's line is also an homage to the infamous Kurt, who used the same line around the Club World Cup a few years ago back in Paris, where he made some headlines for all the wrong reasons. But, of course, Ryan might be thinking about that, and he used that little McGregor line there.
And Spence, there's probably no coincidence that mindset and that joy is aligning with a time where we're seeing them peak.
Yes, I mean, it's a difficult one because Age mentioned it as well about peaking at the right time. That's always what I've said to my players as well. This year more so, we've gone back to a format where talking about the bigger ecosystem here. To qualify for the World Cup, you've got to have a good playoffs. So it's not that it doesn't matter what happens before, because there's huge events like this. There's cash up for grabs and obviously huge titles to win. But in terms of qualifying for the World Cup, you need to have a good playoffs. So peaking at the right time is definitely a thing. You see people that come into the game all guns blazing and drop off. And likewise, Shell's intimated that maybe he does the opposite. He goes into the game. This is a really good time in the year now, in February now, to start showing your form and start putting your head above the parapet and saying, you've forgotten about me this year. I'm actually one to watch. A big win here would do send out a great message to the rest of the field that, maybe the best is yet to come for you.
Well, we've heard from some of our Zone 4 players. It is time now to do the draw. So I think the nerves have built up enough. It is time now for our official Zone 4 draw, and Spencer has the privilege in his hand.
I do. It is a privilege. It's an honour. I love a good draw. Really excited for this. I would have loved hashtag to have qualified, of course, for this event, which would have ruled me out of doing this. Unfortunately, we didn't, so I guess the silver lining is I get to take part in this. So I'm going to empty these balls into this bowl here, and we're going to start looking who's going to be in what group. So here we go.
So this is a snake draw, and all the teams that you can see there on screen are our Zone 4 Europe teams, 14 teams that Spencer's going to select, and they're going to fall into Group A or Group B below.
Correct. So shall I go first?
Yes.
Ready? Okay. First ball is going to be... Oh, okay. It is... See that? Mavericks Gaming Club is the first team pulled out of the pot. So that is Mavericks Gaming Club, Spanish team, and then Group A.
So as we go along, you'll see them drop into the groups below, and you can see now their Mavericks appear in Group A. Each team will play each other once over 2 legs, and it's a point accumulation. Let's see who's next.
Okay. It's difficult doing this with one hand, but here we go. Right. Next team, Off Meta. Okay, Off Meta. I love that team name, and they are the next team out.
So B1 is Off Meta.
Let's go with this one. This is for B2. 2B or not 2B? B2? Doesn't make sense. Genoa Esports, obviously Italian team, playing in the top level of Italian football, and done very well to qualify. So well done to Genoa.
Do you feel nervous, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can mess up here, but I feel like I might mess it up somehow. Let's have a look. Okay, Riders. Star Riders, or formerly known as Spanish team again. Spain as a region is a region they've really done well this year, and they've got a fair few players that have qualified here. So well done to Riders. They're in.
It's going to be a fiercely competitive zone, without a doubt.
Groups starting to sort of form now, and you start to see if there's going to be any groups of death or anything, don't we? Okay, Astralis. Now, we've obviously talked about these guys already. Aga's been on the show. That's a group to watch. Uston's a previous winner. Just making sure you guys can see it. It's going to be a strong side. Definitely one to watch for sure.
Astralis falls into Group A.
Okay. My desk is just covered in blue balls. NOM Esport, NOM Esport is the next team coming out of the selection.
NOM Esports falls into Group B. So Group B now you can see is Off Meta, Genoa Esports and NOM Esports.
Almost halfway through now. Next team, Zeta Gaming. I know a little bit about these guys. They were in our conference, one of the teams that ultimately knocked hashtag out, really. So congratulations to Zeta, who are in.
Zeta Gaming fall into Group B also.
Okay, next. Okay, Schalke, German Giants, Bundesliga side, of course. Been in and around the FIFA esports team for some time now. Definitely a team to watch.
Group A is looking very interesting right now.
I mean, it's impossible to avoid some strong groups because the strength of the field, of course. Okay, this is an interesting one. You've got Wisla All In Games Krakow, obviously associated with Wisla Krakow, the Polish team. Interesting fact, Jakub Blaszczykowski, who plays for them, Polish legend, former Dortmund player, of course, also owns the club. He plays for the team he owns for. I missed the trick there. I should still be playing for Hashtag.
You absolutely missed a trick there. Group A filling up.
Okay, I mentioned them earlier. RB LZ Gaming, or RB Leipzig, of course, another German team in the Champions League final, of course. Semi-final, not final, last year. And a very strong esports team. Really strong offering. They're out of the pot.
I'm so impressed at how you've not been stuck with any of these little balls with flowing through them, Spencer.
Team Hullet. Run and owned a footballing legend, of course. A really strong side, obviously associated with Holland, but I think their players this year coming out of 2 different countries. I think it's, hang on, just find it on my list here. There, I've lost it, hang on. There it is. You've got a player from Romania and a player from Denmark representing Team Hullet.
Amazing.
Okay. I'm nearly done. Couple names left. AC Monza Team Esports. I like this team a lot because they're an Italian football team as well, playing in Serie B. And for me, this is something that the E-Club World Cup is great at, is it allowing teams that aren't necessarily at the top level of real-life football make a name at the top level of FIFA Esports. So well done to them. In the second tier of Italian football. Right.
Who will be the final team in Group A?
So we know we've got Makers and Man City Esports. By the way, 2 massive teams. Like,
yeah,
we talked to the Man City boys, and I think Makers personally are the team to watch. Let's see who it is. It is Makers that have come out here. The Makers are out.
The Makers slide into Group A, and that is your Group A complete.
This should be Man City.
Work out who Group B is. I do hope so.
It is Manchester City Esports. There you go.
So there we have it. Your Group A is Mavericks, Gaming Club, Riders, Astralis, FC Schalke, Vizsla, and AC Monza team and Makers. And in your Group B, we've got Off Meta, Genoa Esports, Nom Esports, Zeta Gaming, Rebels Gaming, Team Hullet, and Manchester City Esports. Let's bring back Mark and Dan because this has got quite a lot of interesting stories happening for us. I know everyone at home who's been watching it, Aga told us earlier he'd be watching us, would have been a little nervous. Should we discuss Group A first, Dan?
Yeah, we should discuss Group A. And that last ball was an important one, whether it was going to be Makers or Man City. Probably those teams were quite happy to avoid one another, but then getting put into Astralis' group. I'd say that Astralis, Makers, Man City, 3 teams who really wanted to avoid one another. They seem to be the powerhouse squads. But overall, I think most people will be pretty happy with the draw. It doesn't seem to be like there's a massive gulfing difference between the 2 groups in terms of power levels. You could argue maybe Group A slightly more difficult than Group B, but also there are some teams like Team Hullet, for example. Mark said has been a bit of a surprise. Maybe they could be a bit of an underdog. So this is looking quite good. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think there's a nice spread across the 2 groups as far as established teams, established players, and some of the newer players and newer teams coming through. It certainly sets it up for underdog stories. I think that's what I love about it. There's not one group that's kind of heavily invested with some of the big teams that we're used to seeing perform at the top level. There's the opportunity for some of those bigger teams to be taken out by the lower ranked teams as far as, history in FIFA esports has been concerned. So it's an interesting one for me. I think it's quite an even draw. I think Spencer's done a good job there.
And Mark,
well, I wasn't going to say it, but it was a great draw.
Well done. Yeah, but firstly, applause to Spencer because those balls, opening them was nice and slick. I appreciate that. Mark, Hullet's team in there, do you think they'll be pleased with the draw and who's been drawn in Group B?
I think they won't care. I know that sounds like a really sort of negative thing to say, but I mean it in the most positive way possible. In the same way that Ryan was saying earlier, they fear no one. They were one of the most consistent teams, not only in their particular zone, but across all of the zones that we had in the FIFAe Club World Cup qualification process. So Team Hullet is certainly one to watch out for. I expect them to get out of the group. I expect them to go far in the tournament. I don't think they fear anyone, and I think they're going to really make a name for themselves.
We're mentioning not fearing anyone. We spoke to Man City boys earlier, Spencer. They'll be in Group B as well. How do you think they'll feel about that? Obviously, apart from the fact that they'll feel fine no matter who they play.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in theory, they wouldn't have minded what draw they got based on their comments. But I agree with the lads. I think the draw is one that no team can really complain about. You should have no reason to not back yourself and feel like you can go the distance. Every single team has made it out of a really troubling and hard qualification process. So they've got to back themselves now. And that draw has given every single team the opportunity to do just that. These aren't my words. These are the words of the community I'm hearing, that was a great draw done by a real good drawersman, which was me. So I was very careful not to try and make too many jokes during it, because it's a sensible, it's a very serious thing. And I do genuinely mean that, because if hashtag were in that, I'd be watching that draw with very keen interest in that we get a good one. So I hope the teams are happy with it. But it was very fun. I enjoyed that a lot. So thank you for allowing me to do the draw.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that, because I think we're going to do it again later on for Zone 5. But before we move on to the Zone 5 draw, let's talk to the Zone 5 reporter who's been focused on the region himself. It's Juan Andres Villamil Osaria.
Hello everyone, here Andres Villamil from Zone 5. Today we will be reviewing some of the highlights from the qualifying previous to the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021. Let's start reviewing Conference 1, where one of the most intense fights between ELS Torneos and Basel Esports, who started leading the conference 3 weeks but ended up in second position after ELS Torneos. Let us check the brackets of the 4th week in Conference 1. Here we saw the unexpected loss of Basel in the first round against New Pampas, and then in the losers bracket against SPQR Brazil team by 2-1. It was definitely not the week, but on the other hand we saw the amazing performance of ELS Torneos, who only lost 2 games in the entire week forward, both in PlayStation, but still made its way to the victory, beating in the final MGCF Esports. However, the most epic match of the conference was the semi-final between MGCF Esports and the SPQR Brazil, determined by the final game in PlayStation. Here, Crepaldi won by 2-1, putting MGCF in the final. Week 4 was just crazy in Conference 1. And how about Conference 2? Here we saw absolute dominance by Dux Latam, that ended first in conference with impressive 19 matches won, but still had surprise in week 4 because lost against Medellin Esports by 2-0. The first one 6-4 and the second 3-2. So intense. This way Medellin was waiting for a rival in the final. Then we had Dux Latam against the Helmet team, who did not make things easy for Dux. First game in PlayStation they took it by 4-2, but then in Xbox and again in PlayStation, Dux retook control and made their way to the final, once again facing Medellin Esports, and already in the final they won 2-0 for having a rematch where we had an incredible definition in PlayStation. Only 1 goal was scored and it was for Dux, winning just like this week 4. Yet the biggest surprise of the week was the TTB Esports. They lost both matches, the first one against T2F Esports and then against Amazonia, ending up in 7th position of the week, but still making it to the zone finals, only by a difference of 30 points above Wolves Esports. What an achievement for TTB, what an exciting conference, what an incredible week 4. Finally, we have a look to Conference 3, and here we witnessed a big surprise for the zone. One team from Division 2 made it not only to Division 1 but also to the zone finals, and I'm of course speaking about Central Español Uruguay, that qualified in 3rd position and almost took a place in the final match of week 4, but it was beaten by one of the strongest teams in the conference, the Netshoes Esports, who in fact won week 4 by winning twice in a row against last qualified of the conference, the Team FW Brazil. And here is a fact: the first qualified team of the conference, the Inter Esports, lost against Central Español Uruguay in the losers bracket and lost the possibility of getting a perfect score in the qualifiers. Still gave us a memorable performance across the 4 weeks. So guys, keep a close eye in Zone 5, because if that's what we saw in the qualifiers, I cannot imagine what we're gonna see in the zone finals. To all team qualified, welcome to the FIFAe Club World Cup 2021.
Juan Andres, thank you for an in-depth breakdown there of Zone 5. That was brilliant. Mark, ELS Torneos in Conference 1 should be super confident. A massive goal difference that they had there.
Yeah, a massive goal difference, but qualification's one thing. Doing it when it matters in the finals is another. I know that might sound like a little bit of juxtaposition because obviously you gotta qualify, you've got to do that hard work and those hard yards. But I just feel like the pressure is ramped up once you get to the finals here. When you get to those moments where you could be out of the tournament after all your hard work. So for them, it's been phenomenal so far. Brilliant, fantastic. Can't say enough. Brilliant. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. But now is crunch time. Now's where you got to really perform in those moments to make yourself a champ.
Spence, who in Zone 5 stands out for you?
Well, I'll tell you a team that stands out for not necessarily the right reasons is Helmet Team. Now, the Helmet Team, we've gone through with a -3 goal difference. Okay, I talked earlier about how Kuwait could squeeze through on +3. To get through with a -3 goal difference is very telling. When you compare that to a team like Inter, who have come through 41 goal difference, the differential between the two teams there is very telling. So there's no doubt about it. Helmet are going to have to improve dramatically in the main event if they've got any chance of winning, because that sort of goal difference is just indicating they're not scoring enough goals. They're conceding too many. It's not, championship level form.
Moving from goals to wins, Dan, Ducks should be going into this very confident with 19 wins.
Ducks should be confident. They're another team that I looked at. Diogo and Zizinho in there. Zizinho performed very well in the E-Champions League in previous years. They are a team that can win this, I feel like. They have this zone and the ability to win this zone. But I'd say their main competitors, FC Basel. We have a previous E-Club World Cup winner in Nicholas, and he's alongside the one and only Spider Kong. And you may remember from the E-Club last year when we saw Spider Kong just erupting when he was playing for AS Roma. Comebacks, passion, all of that drama. Okay, it's slightly different. It's going to be online, but if he can have that same energy, that same passion, add that to Nicholas's calm, cool, collected vibe, then they're a team that I think we should be looking out for, because they can be champions again.
There is no reason why there can't be drama online as well. So the scene is set for Zone 5. Time now to do the draw. So there were 3 conferences in Zone 5. From those conferences, 12 teams have qualified in the group stages. Spencer, Mark and Dan will now draw those teams from 3 separate pots, populating 4 groups, A to D, each made up of 3 teams. Spencer will draw the first team from his pot. He's going to go first. They will go into groups A1, B1 and C1 and D1. Then Mark will be drawing teams for D2, C2, B2 and A2. And finally, Dan will draw the teams for A3, B3, C3 and D3. Spencer, are you ready? You've practiced, so you should be feeling good right now.
I'm ready. It's just 4 balls this time, so it shouldn't be too much complication. Shall I draw the first ball?
Let's begin. Okay. Let's do it.
Let's go with this one. First one out is none other LS Torneos Online. Use their full name. There you go.
A powerful team going into Group A, ELS Torneos Online, into Group A, and that kicks off our Zone 5 draw. Carry on, Sven.
Okay. And this one. Next one is FC Basel 1893. Top team, top players, contenders for sure.
Definitely ones to watch. That's going into Group B1, and the next 4 that Spencer will open will go into Group C1.
Okay, ultimate one from my side of things is SPQR Brazil. SPQR Brazil, strong team, synonymous with Brazil, but this whole tournament is, to be honest. I just worked out that 92% of the players playing in the Zone 5 tournament are Brazilian, and the other 8% Argentinian. So it's just the 2 countries making up.
Did you just casually calculate that?
Yeah, I might use the calculator. MGCF Esports, RMA Tech is the full name, and that is the 4th team. That's my part done.
Thank you, Spencer. We'll bring in Mark now. So we've got our Group A, B, C and D first teams, and Mark is about to pour out the balls from your bag.
Here we go. Just about managed to get
They arrived this morning. Lovely.
All right,
off you go, Mark. Don't waste any time at all. Let's have a look. This is going to be, the first team is going to go into D2.
First one is Helmet Team.
Helmet Team going into Group D2.
Can we get to the next one? Next team is Medellin ES.
Medellin ES, I believe that goes into Group C2. The next one we're going to open is going to go into B2.
Yeah, flying through these. TTB Esports.
TTB Esports goes into Group B2.
The last one.
And the last team that you have there from Conference 2 goes into Group A.
B, Ducks Latam, one of the big teams that we have. Been performing incredibly well.
How interesting. We spoke about these two and now they're both joining in Group A. Thank you, Mark. That was fantastic. Nice and slick. And Dan Gaskin joins us to do the last set of balls, which are going into Group A, B, and C in third position.
First one is going to be Netshoes Esports.
Netshoes Esports goes into Group A3. Wow, we've got a very powerful Group A there. We'll talk about the groups in a moment. B3.
It's going to be Inter Esports. They qualified first in their group, so this is going to be a big one.
Inter Esports goes into Group B3, and we have completed Groups A and B, now drawing for Group C.
And that is going to be Central Espanol Uruguay.
There we go, straight into Group C, completing Group C, Central Espanol Uruguay. And our final ball to complete our draws for today and completing Group D is
Team Footwiz Brazil is going to be the last one in Group D.
And so there you have it. Our Group A, B, C, and D for Zone 5 is complete. Dan, thank you very much. That's all gone very slick. I think we're all very relieved right now.
Yeah. To be honest, I Spencer's had like 30 balls to do. We had 4 each, and I think I was more panicked than he was. He's got more experience on his side, I think, when it comes to doing draws.
Dan, Group A stands out for me. Some strong teams in there.
Some strong teams all around, which I think we knew was going to happen, but Ducks Latam, certainly when you look at those players and the achievements they've been able to have across the years, Cezinio and Diego, they are going to really want to push through, but going alongside ELS, they have also performed well. Netshoes had a fantastic tournament in their conference. So, I mean, I'd say all of these groups are pretty strong, Layla.
Another great balanced draw there. But Mark, is there any groups here that you think there's a team that will have a tactical advantage?
I think there's a team that's going to have a problem, and that's in Group B, TTB Esports. You've got SC Basel and Inter, two of the best performing teams in the qualification process, with some of the biggest names we have in FIFA Esports. Kind of, they're the meat in the sandwich as far as Group B is concerned. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle for them to fight their way out of it. But that for me has been, like, out of all the groups and all the draws we've done so far, that looks like the closest thing to a group of death we've had. So best of luck to TTB Esports.
Spence, would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think Group A and B are the stronger two. No disrespect to the teams in C and D, but I feel like you'd be wanting to avoid the teams in A and B. The other interesting thing about Group B is two of the teams are actually European clubs, if you like, or organisations. You've got Basel from Switzerland and Inter from Italy. Obviously, we already mentioned in terms of the players, it's mostly Brazilians with a few Argentinians, but I like the fact that you've got this worldwide brand building opportunity, European clubs doing what they can in South America.
So we've had quite a pivotal day today, 2 big draws. It's the final day before they now just get their heads down and prepare, because we've got the finals in merely 6 days' time that it's kicking off. How will they all be feeling now after seeing this draw, which, you know, it's just a matter of a draw. It's a matter of luck. It's nothing you can prepare for or change. Dan, tell us, how do you think they'll be feeling right now?
I think a lot of people will look at the draw at face value and they'll be thinking about who they're avoiding in their first group. Then, of course, you've got what happens after the group when you get to the knockout stages, and you are going to be in a situation where you may have avoided a team in that group stage, but now suddenly you might be playing them in the early stages of knockout, depending on where you finish. So you need to make sure you're finishing at the top of your group to ensure that you're not facing some of those good teams in the other groups. But in general, I think everyone's going to be pretty excited. I think Spencer hit the nail on the head. There are a couple of stronger groups in Zone 5. So those 2 that are in the arguably weaker groups, maybe they're going to have a better path into the knockouts, but then it's going to be a harder path once they get there.
Mark, looking overall, you spoke earlier about some teams that you thought would stand out, some teams that we felt were underdogs, and some sort of surprise teams there. Has anything changed for you now that we've seen the draw?
No, not really. I think that I think the draw's been pretty even across the board as far as experience, as far as achievements in the past for all the players and all the teams that are involved. I think it's worked out really nicely where when we do get to that knockout stage, we're going to have some huge games between some huge clubs. So it's going to be the kind of perfect culmination of the group stage going into that knockout. It means we're going to have some really strong teams. And if you fight through one of those groups as the underdog and you get into that knockout bracket, then all of a sudden you're thinking we've already beaten some of the biggest teams that we have in the tournament, or in total. So there's no reason that you can't go all the way and make it through to a final, become the champion of your zone. It's been a really good draw, I think, for every single team that's involved. I think most teams are going to be happy with what they've seen today.
And so, Spencer, it all comes down to this. Next week is the final. What can people expect from it?
Expect fireworks. For me, the tournament starts here. With the draw, that's when you start to get in that mind frame as a player. You know who you're playing. You start to prepare. And I just love the fact that we've been able to do it. Obviously a challenging year this year, but great to make content like this, to chat to some of the players, to get inside their heads a little bit. And I've been lucky enough to work on every single Club World Cup. And every year I always make a point of saying how great it is to see it grow and get bigger. And whilst we're not getting that live event that we love this year for obvious reasons, the event is still getting bigger. The amount of teams that wanting to take part is bigger than ever. So these guys that have qualified, you've already done fantastically well, but the hard work starts now. The draw bowl is empty. Good luck to you all.
Well, you've been watching the FIFA Club World Cup pre-show from me, Dan, Mark and Spencer. Thank you so much for watching. We will all see you again on February the 24th when the group stages begin. You can watch it on FIFA.gg, YouTube, Facebook and Twitch when we will discover the legends of the badge. Enjoy.
The 42 best clubs in the world, ready to write history and become legends of the badge. Ultimate glory is at stake, a chance to create a legacy at their fingertips, with dreams of achieving greatness, making their way to the biggest stage. But only 6 will be crowned this year's FIFA Club World Cup Zone winners. Follow all the action on FIFA.gg.